come from a kind of journalistic background. What made you want to start writing novels?
Um, well, I never thought I would write a book because I was so used to writing magazine stories, and those are mostly the longest they get is like 1,000 words. So I didn't think I could write a 60,000 word novel. But when I was working at Elle Girl, I would often interview new models as they came into New York City, and I found their world to be so glamorous and dark and scary and fabulous all at once that I really thought there was good potential to set a novel where a normal girl gets kind of swept up in that world a little bit, because that's how I felt when I first came to New York and started meeting them. So that's where like the idea for Violet on the Runway came from, and once that idea took hold, I really wanted to write it. And so it was sort of like a case of just an idea taking over as opposed to me thinking, oh, I want to write a book. It was first the idea came, and then I thought, this is a book. So that's kind of what gave me the first impetus to do fiction.
What made you decide to do young adult fiction?
Well, I loved working with the teen audience, and I was working at Elle Girl, and I had done some writing for Teen Vogue and 17, and I just really loved connecting with that audience the most. Because when I worked at women's magazines, we would often get a bunch of mail about like, oh, could you put another coupon in the back, or oh, it was great to see this story about like changing diapers, and I was just like, I can't relate to this. But when I worked in a teen magazine, it was like they were just obsessed with the celebrities and like really into the stories and so into their favorite lipstick, and I was just like, this is how I feel about things. Like I care, I'm really passionate about random stuff. So I loved the enthusiasm of that audience, and I thought it would be a great one to write for forever.
What kind of aspects of writing or just things do you think you've brought from magazine writing to novel writing, or from novel writing when you go back to magazine writing?
Well, one thing that I know I did, I had trouble writing fictional characters when I first started because I was so used to interviewing people and then putting together a story based on what real people told me. And so I ended up doing this exercise where I wrote out questions for my characters as if they were real people that I was going to interview, and then I interviewed them sort of in my head. Like I would pretend to be Violet and just answer all these questions about like, what's your favorite thing? What's your relationship with your mom like? What TV shows do you like? What music do you listen to? As if I was interviewing a real girl. And that helped me kind of figure out who the characters were a little bit, and that was definitely based on my journalistic years. And in terms of the other way around, I think I try not to bring anything because it's really not good to bring fiction to nonfiction writing, but I do sometimes get frustrated when I feel like I'm interviewing someone and they're not saying what I want or need them to say, and I'll think, oh, I wish this person were just a character who I could make them say what I want to say. But I never do that because that would be bad. So I try to keep those separate, and I actually like structure my day in a way so that like fiction is in the morning and magazine stuff is in the afternoon, so that it doesn't overlap at all, because it's kind of two different parts of my brain.
Would you ever think about writing for adults, and what do you think would have to change in your tone or approach to even the subject of, fictional fashion or just in general writing novels?
Really, I'm not ready to write for adults yet. I think because I really know what it's like to be a teenager, but I'm not quite sure what it's like to be an adult yet. Like I don't think I have a good handle on it the way that I have a handle on like my teen years. So I think I need to get a little older and mature a little more before I feel like I can write something for adults. But I don't know what I would change. I mean, one thing that happens now when I read adult novels is that I get bored sometimes. Like I feel like young adult novels, you move things very quickly, good. And with adult novels, it's like they could have an entire chapter that just is describing like a living room, and that is always slowing me down and bogging me down when I'm reading adult novels. And so I think if I did write an adult novel, I'd want to keep the same kind of YA pace because I really enjoy it. And I guess guess I would just change the characters, just change how old they are and what their situations are, but not much else, because I really enjoy the energy of young adult novels.
What are some of your favorite young adult novels or young adult authors?
I love Sarah Dessen. I've always loved Sarah Dessen, and I have read everything, and sometimes I go back to her books just to learn from again, because I feel like she does characters really well, situations really well, and friendships and love. One of my new favorites actually is Natalie Standiford. Her How to Say Goodbye in Robot is a fantastic book, and I just read Confessions of the Sullivan Sisters, which is her new book that's out this fall, and I just think she has like a really quirky Royal Tenenbaums way of writing that I really enjoy. I loved Before I Fall, Lauren Oliver's book. I thought that was a really great one. I love Courtney Summers. I always think of them together because they have that kind of popular girl takes a fall thing going on. But I love Courtney Summers. I think she writes these really raw, emotional books that somehow get every moment right. And just finished Maureen Johnson's Sweet Scarlet and Scarlet Fever, and those were amazing. And I sometimes I get tired of books that are set in New York City because I live here and there's a lot of books that are set here, but Maureen's books just made me fall in love with New York City all over again. So they made me like want to go into Manhattan and do like a Sweet Scarlet tour. So that was really cool. So those are some of my latest favorites.
A lot of young adult authors that I've interviewed have spoken about a community of young adult authors. Do you feel that that's there, and have you had some experiences in it?
Yeah, it's actually really great. Coming from magazines, which are really fun, but can get a little catty and cutthroat sometimes, I was really happy to meet a bunch of young adult authors in New York who get together once a month for drinks and share ideas and contacts, and it's a really, really friendly world.
On your website, you said you do some speaking engagements. Have you had any good experiences with that?
I actually, one of my favorite speaking engagements, I spoke to a girls' club in New Jersey, and it was like their kind of senior night, and there were a bunch of graduating seniors, and they just asked me to speak, but they didn't tell me what to speak about, so I just spoke about being a writer and how when you head off to college, it's kind of, there's a lot of pressure to figure out what your major is and what you're going to do with your life, and I just talked about how I was really grateful to my parents because they had always said, being a writer is a real job, where almost everyone else in my world said, oh, that's not really a job. Are you going to teach with that English degree? I really loved talking to them because I felt like I got to talk to them about, really pursuing their passions and not, majoring in something just because it's what they think will make a great career, but majoring in something they really love. And I always give the example of our fashion editor at Elle Girl was a business major in college, but then she decided she really loved fashion, and the business degree comes in handy in a certain way, and she just pursued that. So it's all about going for what you love.
Do you have any advice for aspiring young adult authors?
First, my advice is to read everything that you can. I feel like every time I read a YA book, whether I like it or whether I don't, I learn something from it. And it's amazing to be able to keep learning through reading because reading is fun. So definitely keep reading. And the other thing I would say is my one piece of advice for writing is finish the books that you start. So I know everyone loves to start a new book and it's exciting, and then you get to that middle part where you're like, I don't know, it's dragging, I'm just going to put this down and start something else and go with a new idea. But I really think the difference between published authors and people who have a lot of books in the drawer is that published authors really finish their books. And getting to the end is really hard, and it's not all fun, but it's a really worthwhile skill to be able to get to the end of your book. You start something, map it out, see what the ending is like, and get